The chandelier sparkled like shattered stars, casting glittering reflections over the sea of perfectly pressed tuxedos and designer gowns that filled the Easton Foundation Gala. Every detail of the grand ballroom was dripping in wealth: gold trim, ivory columns, soft music from a live string quartet. And yet, the moment Amara Sinclair stepped through the towering glass doors, it felt as though the music faltered, the lights dimmed, and the air grew colder. She paused, one heel still lingering on the black carpet that lined the entrance, and immediately felt 100 eyes pin her down like a butterfly in a glass box. The crowd wasn't quiet, just differently loud now. Conversations continued, but voices dropped just enough to turn curiosity into contempt. Their stares weren't neutral, they were questioning, judging, and in some cases, openly disapproving. One woman, a pale socialite in a shimmering silver gown, turned and whispered something to her husband. He chuckled, eyes never leaving Amara. Amara had expected nerves. She had not expected humiliation. She forced her posture straighter, smoothing her hand along the sleek line of her vintage black satin gown. The dress hugged her curves modestly, falling in elegant ripples to the floor. She had carefully paired it with minimal jewelry, a pair of crystal earrings in her late mother's bracelet, and styled her coily hair into an elegant updo. Amara had looked in the mirror before stepping out and thought, "You look powerful." But now, under the scrutiny of the gala elite, she felt like a fraud. A tall man in a gray tuxedo strode toward her, eyes squinting slightly. "Can I help you?" he asked, voice clipped and formal. "I'm Amara Sinclair," she replied calmly, reaching into her clutch for the invitation. "I'm on the guest list." The man's eyes flickered to the envelope. He didn't take it. Instead, he signaled to a young woman standing behind a podium, then turned back to Amara with an unreadable expression. One moment, the young woman behind the podium tapped on her tablet, scanned the list, and gave a slight pause. "Miss Sinclair," she said hesitantly. "Yes, you're here. Interior designer, correct? You worked on the new children's wing." "Yes." Amara nodded once, voice steady despite the crack forming beneath her armor. "I did." The woman forced a smile. "Welcome." But the welcome didn't stretch far. As Amara stepped deeper into the ballroom, the looks grew bolder, more direct. Her heels clicked against the floor like gunshots. She passed a trio of middle-aged women sipping from champagne flutes. One of them leaned toward the other, saying far too loudly, "I didn't know they let consultants attend now." Another added with a dry laugh, "I suppose charity's taken on new meaning." Amara kept walking. She had learned long ago not to react. In the foster system, any sign of weakness was a crack in your armor. At college, being the only black woman in a room full of trust fund babies taught her to become both invisible and unforgettable. Now, as the owner of one of the fastest growing interior design firms in New York, she had hardened her edges. But even armor can dent. She spotted her assigned table, table 17, tucked near the back, farthest from the stage. A quick glance showed the seats were already filled with others she didn't recognize, mostly older couples and a few foundation volunteers. No one looked up when she approached. "Excuse me," she said gently. A man with thinning blonde hair turned, confused, then scanned her from head to toe. "Are you staff?" Amara blinked. "No, I'm a guest." "Oh." He cleared his throat, clearly flustered. "Of course." She took the one empty seat left at the table. The woman beside her subtly shifted her chair away. It was a silent rejection, and somehow more painful than words. A few moments later, a waiter passed by with a tray of drinks. He offered one to everyone at the table, except her. She raised her hand slightly, and he passed without pause. It was hard not to laugh. Or cry. She reached into her clutch and pulled out her phone, staring at the dark screen before typing a single message. "You were right. They didn't want me here." It took less than 30 seconds for the reply to arrive. "Then let them choke on your success. I'm on my way." Her heart skipped. She hadn't expected that. The words were sharp, bold, and exactly what she needed. But the fact that he was coming, that shook her. She hadn't told him which gala it was. He must have remembered from when she had offhandedly mentioned it over coffee. He always remembered. That was the dangerous part. Elias Voss wasn't someone who could blend into a crowd. When he entered a room, it didn't shift, it rearranged itself around him. Tech billionaire, venture capitalist, philanthropist. The media painted him as a ruthless genius. She had seen a different side. Amara met Elias 6 months ago, during a pitch meeting for a children's therapy center. She was presenting design concepts. He was funding the project. Most of the men in the room barely looked at her slides. Elias didn't just look, he asked questions. Good ones, challenging ones. He saw her. They stayed in touch, texted, met for coffee, once, dinner. She never let herself believe it was anything more than friendship. The world he moved in didn't make room for women like her. Especially not at his side. So, when she read those words, "I'm on my way," she wasn't sure if her chest ached from hope or fear. Half an hour passed. The gala rolled on, complete with auction announcements, donor speeches, and too loud applause. Amara clapped along when appropriate, smiled politely when needed. But her mind was somewhere else. Everywhere else. She couldn't shake the lingering sting of rejection. A woman at the table excused herself loudly and walked away without looking at Amara. The couple next to her were laughing, but their smiles twisted when their eyes drifted toward her. One of them leaned in and said in a stage whisper, "Maybe she snuck in." Amara breathed in deeply. This was too much. She could leave. She didn't need this. And then, the entire atmosphere of the ballroom shifted. Not slowly, all at once. Gasps rolled across the room like a ripple in still water. Heads turned. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Even the auctioneer on stage paused mid-word. Because he had arrived. Tall, dark suit, black shirt, no tie. His presence was lightning, impossible to ignore, even harder to understand. Elias Voss walked into the Easton Foundation Gala like he owned the building. Technically, he owned half of it. And he didn't scan the room for networking opportunities. He didn't wave at donors or pose for photographs. He walked straight toward her. Amara froze, fingers still curled around her champagne glass. She barely noticed that her seatmate had stood up in shock. The murmurs swelled into a low roar of whispers as Elias stopped in front of her. He didn't say a word. He took her hand, and then, without asking for permission, without caring who watched, he kissed her. Not a chaste, polite peck. Not a calculated display of power. A real kiss. A kiss that silenced the entire ballroom. That screamed without words, "She is with me. She belongs here, and you will respect her." When he pulled back, his hand lingered at her waist, and his voice was low enough for her ears only. "I told you," he said. "Let them choke on your success." She blinked. "You really came." He smiled, just barely. "I don't like when people try to dim stars." She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. For the first time that night, she didn't feel small. She felt visible. The whispers behind them grew louder. Phones were discreetly lifted. Photos were already being snapped. But Elias didn't move. He didn't care. She could see them now, the ones who had ignored her, now desperate to be seen by her. But Amara was no longer trying to be accepted. She was too busy standing tall in her own light, with the man who saw her shining long before the world did. The moment his lips touched hers, the room seemed to vanish. The clinking of silverware, the soft hum of the string quartet, even the whispering crowd, everything was swallowed by that single, powerful instant. Elias Voss hadn't kissed her like a man making a statement. He had kissed her like a man claiming what was already his, unapologetically, without fear or hesitation. Amara didn't know whether to breathe or collapse. She felt the weight of every stare in the ballroom drilling into her back, but it no longer mattered. For the first time that night, she wasn't shrinking beneath their judgment, she was standing in something far stronger than acceptance, certainty. Elias was real, this moment was real, and the sudden shift in the room told her one undeniable truth. Everything had changed. When he pulled back, his gaze locked onto hers, soft but unwavering. His voice was low and smooth, the kind that made people stop talking just to hear more. "I hope I'm not too late." "You're right on time," she whispered, her voice barely functioning through the whirlwind of emotions. "I didn't think you'd actually come." He smiled faintly, a twitch at the corner of his lips. "Then you still don't know me very well." That smile, that quiet, knowing grin, reminded her of the countless conversations they'd shared in little cafes, sitting in mismatched chairs, trading ideas and laughter between sips of coffee. He had always listened more than he spoke, always watched the room like someone measuring its weight. But right now, he wasn't measuring. He was commanding. Behind them, a camera flash flickered. Then another. Elias didn't flinch. Instead, he turned toward the table Amara had been seated at, the one where she'd been treated like a misplaced handbag. "Is this your table?" he asked, voice just loud enough to carry. Amara hesitated. "Yes." One of the men at the table, a portly donor with a red tie and a face now drained of color, cleared his throat. "Mr. Voss, we weren't aware you'd be joining us tonight." Elias raised an eyebrow. Clearly, the man tried to recover. "Please, sit with us. We'd be honored." But Elias ignored him completely. He turned back to Amara and offered his arm. "Come with me." She looped her hand through his arm like it was the most natural thing in the world. The gasp that followed could have knocked over the champagne tower. As they began to walk, the sea of guests parted. Some smiled awkwardly, others looked away, and a few offered greetings that Elias didn't acknowledge. They passed a group of women in glittering gowns, the same ones who had laughed earlier. Now their laughter had dried into silence, their painted smiles twitching with unease. "Is that her?" one of them whispered. "Must be. I heard he's been seeing someone, but no one knew who." She's not even." "Shush, he's looking this way." Amara felt Elias tighten his grip on her hand ever so slightly, guiding her through the crowd with the ease of someone born to walk among royalty, even if he preferred solitude. She remembered the rumors, how he hated public events, how he despised fake smiles and empty conversations. And yet, he was here. With her. At the front of the ballroom, they reached a vacant VIP table marked with a gold plaque. "Reserved for board members." Elias pulled out a chair and gestured for her to sit. "This one's better, don't you think?" She laughed, a real laugh, not the tight, polite one she'd practiced all evening. "A little." He sat beside her, his hand never leaving hers. The moment felt surreal, like she'd been dragged from a nightmare and placed inside a dream she hadn't dared to imagine. Waiters suddenly materialized, pouring wine, offering dishes, filling the table with attention they hadn't earned before. "I think you broke the gala," she said under her breath. He tilted his head. "Good." The program on stage resumed. The MC, flustered but determined, attempted to steer attention back to the auction items. But the audience was no longer focused on diamond necklaces or exotic trips. They were whispering, stealing glances, asking questions. Who was the black woman beside Elias Voss? How did they know each other? Was she his date, his girlfriend, his future? Elias leaned toward her, keeping his voice private. "Do you want to stay?" She glanced around. People still stared, but now their stares were laced with curiosity, not dismissal. There was power in being seen, but only when it came from a place of truth. She didn't need their validation. "Not anymore. I want to stay," she said. "Not for them, for me." "Good," he said again. "Then let's make it worth it." They sipped wine, talked, laughed. Elias wasn't trying to rescue her. He wasn't shielding her. He was elevating her, acknowledging her presence, her worth, her right to belong. Every so often, someone would muster up the courage to approach. The event coordinator nervously stepped forward. "Mr. Voss, Miss Sinclair, we'd love to have a word." Elias held up a hand. "We're not taking meetings tonight." "Oh, no, of course, I meant. We're not taking meetings," Elias repeated, softer but firm. The coordinator scurried off, red-faced. Amara raised an eyebrow. "You didn't have to do that." "I know," he said. "But I wanted to." Later in the evening, Elias was called up to say a few words about the foundation. The MC's voice trembled slightly as he welcomed him to the stage, like she wasn't sure if Elias would even show. He stood, kissed Amara's hand, and whispered, "I'll be quick." Then he climbed the steps with the confidence of a man who didn't need a spotlight but knew how to use one when necessary. "Good evening," he said into the mic, his deep voice cutting through the noise like velvet steel. "Many of you know me. Some of you think you do. Let me clarify one thing tonight. This gala is about inclusion. About innovation. About supporting futures that are often overlooked." He paused, eyes scanning the crowd. "And yet, some of you forgot that." There was a collective stillness. No one dared move. I watched someone I admired deeply walk into this room tonight and be dismissed, ignored, and underestimated. That someone is Amara Sinclair. A woman who designed the children's wing this entire event is celebrating. Without her, there would be no new space. No improved therapy rooms. No upgraded technology. She brought the vision to life, and many of you didn't even look her in the eye. More silence. "I came tonight to support this foundation. But more importantly, I came tonight to stand beside her. Because she belongs in every room she enters. And if you don't see that, the problem isn't her. He stepped down without a smile, without a bow. Just conviction. When he returned to their table, the applause was scattered and uncomfortable. A few people clapped. Most just sat, stunned. Amara stared at him, words trapped somewhere between her heart and throat. You didn't have to do that. I know, he repeated. But I will. Every time. Her fingers found his under the table. No one looked at her the same now, but that wasn't what mattered. What mattered was the way she looked at herself. Stronger, braver, finally free from the need to fit into spaces that weren't built for her. By the end of the night, several people approached her with fake smiles, extending invitations to speak at panels or pitch her services. She politely declined them all. Not out of spite, but out of wisdom. She'd learned who saw her value before Elias kissed her, and who only saw it after. When the gala finally ended, Elias helped her into his car, the night sky glittering above them. You realize you just shook up an entire ecosystem of rich people, she teased. He shrugged. They needed it. Won't this affect your image? Only if I care about the wrong people. She smiled, leaning her head against the window as the car rolled away. She felt different, not because of him, because of what she had faced, and chosen to rise above. He had walked into the fire with her, but she had already been walking through it alone. Now, she walked out of it transformed. And maybe, just maybe, they were only getting started.